We've been taking Digibro for granted. A bold claim, yes, but I'm not the first to make it. Ember Reviews, in his video What Killed the Anime Review, takes extensive note of the role Digi played in the shift from reviews to analysis videos. While I'd argue the traditional review has merely been replaced with a seasonal first impression, as they functionally serve the same purpose but better. The fact of the matter is, the anime analysis community is the tip of the spear which pushes the Western fandom towards growth. The reason people come back time and again more than they otherwise would is for the discussion that goes beyond the base reaction, or the end-all be-all of a definitive review, and memes of course. While killing Sword Art Online and providing life-saving emotional support for people, and being a template from which many others would follow, could have been done by anyone, it was done by Digibro. Thus, it is that man that I'm going to focus on today, for understanding the character that is Digibro, and what he stands for, gives us a basis to understand the pros and cons, the good things and the defects, of the anime community as it is now. The current state, the postmodern condition. Before I get to Digibro proper, I need to talk about the nature of the universe. I promise this will become relevant. Consider for a moment what you can know with absolute certainty. Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am." But as Bertrand Russell points out, all he managed to do was prove that thoughts exist. It has collectively taken humanity decades to come to the conclusion that the only thing we can know for certain is that there is something, and that there isn't nothing. Everything else we conclude is ultimately based off of a leap of faith. That's not to say that there were not thinkers who knew this before, many did. But for the common human, this knowledge only managed to sink in with the widespread adoption of the internet. We're children of the postmodern, post-truth world, remnants of a forgot past, and we know that the only thing that compels one to attach an I to thoughts is desire. Perhaps there is a universal truth, but if there is, our fallible, not omniscient minds can't know it. Allow me to put forth a theory. Every single cultural group originating from the internet develops backward in philosophical history, moving from a meta-modern perspective to a pre-modernist perspective. I will not be so bold as to say that I can prove this theory, but I feel I can make a compelling case with the anime community's development, and in this timeline, Digibro is Socrates. To explain how Digi changed things, we should look at the cultural landscape pre-Digi, which was dominated by the traditional review format. While there were outliers such as Uber Hikari,
here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. I'll be talking about characters that I think have the best ethical and psychological complexity.
Most videos weren't really analytical. How would you describe them as meta-modern then? Well, going by YouTuber Rodeen's explanations of the phrases, which I feel to be the most comprehensive, meta-modernism can be characterized by the oscillation between worldviews. You don't have a singular guiding truth that's consistent, like in pre-modern, nor are you creating or discovering new perspectives, like with New Sincerity, or Modernism. And you certainly can't classify the traditional review as postmodern. There is meaning, there is method to the madness. However, the quote-unquote objectively determined scores were based on a variety of factors, outside emotions, how people would react, personal bias, and none were particularly held up as more important than any of the other reasons consistently. Sometimes you get the masses paying lip service to objectivity, sometimes it was all about the particular reviewer's experience. Other times it's about what the show did for the community, but the method was itself the consensus. If we all agreed it was true, we would force that decision wherever we went like a murmuration. One only needs to critically look at Gikuk's, Arcada's, or King of Lightning's old scores in the comments to see this. This methodology is extremely similar to the cults of ancient Greece, which dominated the philosophy of the ancient world, if importantly different in regards to this flocking phenomenon. But of course, also like ancient Greece, all of this changed when Socrates attacked.
Because that's the problem I have with most of these guys, is they don't get to the fucking point.
The Existential Condition. I am a firm believer in hard determinism. The material structure of the world determines exactly what will happen and how. Unlike the ancient Greek cults, nearly everybody who uses the internet receives a public education. And so, various Enlightenment ideas are but in their heads about the existence of absolute truth and the strength of reason. So even though in practice there was no locus of central truth, and people just oscillated around what they like at the time, it was inevitable that someone would break the bubble and expose the masses as dogs chasing their own tail. And with this exposure for the first time, a genuine self-awareness would begin to emerge. The mere stage of an entire Western anime community, and whatever the belief of the being who burst the bubble was, that would be the idea that the masses would cling on to in their desperation to find grounding. Digibro practices an existential and postmodern philosophy, though I doubt he would identify his thinking as such. What Digibro does for the Western anime community is very simple. He inverts. Does the accepted or obvious conceal its opposite? Perhaps sanity and reason are just a mask for madness. Which do you really prefer, order or chaos? Are the shows that you like actually well crafted, or do they just appeal to you? And if they aren't, does that matter? This is not to say Digibro is a contrarian for its own sake. Sometimes, if you invert something, it will come out of the other end looking the same. This is the beauty of a simple, well-made shonen, or a slice-of-life show. Other times, you will get a new perspective that you can admire in addition to your original one. But sometimes, as was the case with SAO and Erased, this inversion will make a clear divide between those who like it for what a work sets out to do and those who don't. But how is this existential or postmodern in any way? Surely the fact that everything is subjective is just a fact of life that should be brought attention to. The question is, for what purpose this self-awareness must be established? This will determine the distinction between the material analysis of the subject and the idealist one. The idealist analysis of the subject sees self-awareness primarily as a means of personal enlightenment. This isn't to say the collective happiness of all people is ignored, but rather, from this perspective, the way we get to that goal is for as many individuals as possible to embrace their own free will, and do not live in bad faith, as Sartre would say. We existed on the internet as atomized individuals in the void, and we should keep from bumping into each other needlessly. We are thrown into existence, and hell is other people. Existentialism is a humanist idea, and a bit of humanism was much needed if we were to evolve to the next stage. Of course, only a fool would believe the current state of affairs could last forever. The medium is the message, and the internet is constantly evolving. Progress or destruction awaits one way or another. So, assuming humanity doesn't nuke itself or destroy the planet, what might we see in the future? Consider virtual reality technology and peer-to-peer networking. Consider the increase in globalization and the centralization of power around the globe. Imagine the consequences of cheaper electricity and made-to-order anime with the power of AI and automation. We're talking about massive changes to multiple industries, not just anime. Any such cultures that develop from this environment will be fundamentally alien to the people who make up the community now. We are on the brink of a great social revolution, which will inevitably lead to a political revolution. As workers compete with machines and are eventually replaceable, we will find ourselves at a crossroads. When that day comes where we have to choose, we will need a strong sense of ourselves and each other that Digibro provided and continues to provide to some limited extent. The groundwork for a movement towards material analysis view the endless resources of the net, bonded as we are to virtual communities, which shall further develop in terms of critical thinking skills, is my unorthodox reason for why I don't think Digibro is truly appreciated as he should be.